All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to bring you today my guest, Joel Green. Joel, welcome.
Heather, thanks for having me on.
Oh, super great to connect with you. I know you're on the other coast and you're getting towards the end of your day, so I appreciate you being here with us today.
No problem, no problem.
All right, for folks that don't know Joel, sorry, give me 1 second. Here we go. I'm just looking 1 second at your bio. Okay, started with pro level training. I just want to make sure that I'm introducing. Here we go. Here's the part that introduces you. All right, so my editor will fix that up. All right, for those of you that don't know Joel Green is CEO of Pro Level Training, the national director of Nike Sports Camps, a former professional basketball player, and a renowned motivational speaker. After retiring from his career in professional basketball, Joel founded Pro Level Training, which has become a 7-figure company. In addition to running PLT, Green is also the national director for Nike Sports Camps, as well as an accomplished speaker. He was honored to speak to thousands and deliver his own TED Talk. A thought leader in the motivational category, Joel Green has a BA in psychology from Rider University, which has helped to fuel his ambition to inspire others. He has developed a reputation for personal excellence and motivational talks that contribute tangible advice for attaining desired goals. Many of the messages he has delivered are conveyed in his first book, Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle, due to release on September 6th. And folks, it's live now. We were just chatting before we went live here. His book is out there and available to grab, so we will mention more about that later in the conversation, and we'll share those links in the show notes. Joel, I'm so happy to have you here today. I know before we went live, we were also chatting about the Nike Sports Camps because my son got to benefit from several of those camps this summer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Again, that's a passion of mine. So anybody I know had a part in it, just been able to enjoy it. I appreciate you guys just for, signing them up for it.
Oh my gosh. Well, he's a kid that he is 10 and he's a really busy guy. And I just know like summer comes and we have got to keep him busy, and he has a ton of energy. And so we end up looking for quite a mix of sports camps. We actually put him into music camp this year, art camp. He did dance camp. He did like several rounds of hip hop dance camp. It was super fun.
Really
and
cool.
He actually is a great little dancer. So it was probably more a thrill for me than it was for him, but he's such a sport about it. He went and did it all and had a great summer.
That's awesome. More power to him. That's what it's all about. Again, I have a 9-year-old son, so I get the energy level and just having to keep them from being so bored, and I understand.
Oh, yeah, summers. I joke that like nobody designed summer schedules or summer camps, truthfully, with the parents in mind. Like, we also have a 5-year-old, and I laugh that this summer so many of our camps were half days, but it's like the best we could do. And so we would be like driving this kid there, having to swap halfway through the day to, it just felt like a mix and match. But we made it through. Here we are on the verge of school starting.
You made it. Right.
Yeah, that's right. So are you guys in school out there? Is your little guy back in school?
Yeah, his first day was the day after Labor Day. So about 3 days ago was the first day of school. He was ready to go back, fortunately. Excited to see his friends again, wear his new clothes. So, that was the whole excitement. So he's geared up and ready.
Getting all settled in. Oh, that brings me back. You said wearing the new clothes. I remember like being a little kid and feeling really like it was Christmas the next day.
Right.
Was gonna start.
Exactly. You can't wait to show off your new something, your new backpack. Back in the day, it was like I couldn't wait to show kids my new Trapper Keeper, but they don't have those anymore. So
Trapper Keepers.
Right. Exactly.
Well, it is interesting how I've noticed, because with my kids and all the little cousins, there's like 2 modes. Some kids are ready and roaring to go back, and others are like, no, I want more summer,
Exactly.
I know. It makes me wonder how I ended up on the side that really loved school and wanted to go back. Don't know what that means, but it was a good fit for me. Yeah. So Joel, I want to hear a little bit about your background. Obviously, you're up to some awesome things right now, but I'd love to know more about the earlier part of your journey and how you got into athletics. Can you take us back in time a little bit and share with us kind of the start of your journey?
Well, as far as the start of my athletic journey, I have a pretty funny story. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with a movie called Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox back in the mid 80s. He was a high school basketball player and he wasn't good at all. And but he turned into this wolf and he became amazing at basketball. And I probably saw this movie back in 88, 89-ish. I was about 3 or 4 years old. And I fell in love with it. Like literally there's a part in the movie to where it was a slow motion scene and the ball was bouncing. And I just love the sound of basketball. And it was poetic to me. It's crazy as it sounds. I mean, even as a 3-year-old, it was poetic to me. And I just used to imitate that. I used to have my little Nerf ball and I used to just bounce it in slow motion and just to try to make the same sound. It was a cheesy movie, but you know, it got me into basketball and my brothers and my daddy they kept it going for me. Got me into organized basketball, and fortunately, I grew and grew and grew. I'm 6'8" now, so I kept going. And
Everybody else stopped, and you kept growing.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's exactly what happened. And you know, I was able to just grow in the game of basketball in Philadelphia, and just it kept me off the streets, to be honest. As a lot, I grew up in a very urban setting. It was the middle of the crack era, the late 80s, early 90s. I grew up in an abandoned house. Just to let you know what I was around, it was a very difficult environment. I lived next door to another abandoned house where a homeless guy lived, and he used to have a gun, and it was just all sorts of things that was scary in my environment growing up, and being close to a shooting when I was 6 years old. That was horrific. And I was the only person there outside of the two shooters and the kid that got shot. So just growing up in that setting, it gave me a callous toward, difficulties, to be honest with you, wearing other people's clothes that was donated from the church. And I was humbled early. So I still carry the same spirit of humility today, and I try to give that to my son. It's a little difficult because he doesn't have that same situation, but I just try to carry that within everything that I do. I carried it on a court. I may achieve something amazing and other people can praise it. I'm downplaying it. I'm like, nope, I want to do it again. So I'm not going to dare, talk it up too much or even become complacent as a result of talking it up too much. So I'm real protective. I have a wall when it comes to my humility, and I've spoken on that before because I don't want to lose it. I know how easy it is to lose humility just by talking yourself up too much and feeling yourself too much. So throughout my life, throughout my career, I just kind of carried that same mindset. Now I do the same thing in business now, just doing my best to literally go all out as hard as I possibly can in business, and let the chips fall where they may.
How do you feel that humility serves you?
It serves me very well. I mean, it literally is what keeps me working, because the fact that I don't get too high on myself, I pat myself on the back, and I had to learn how to do that. I'll be honest with you. I had people tell me, hey, you better appreciate what you have going on. And I had to learn how to pat myself on the back. I really had to learn how to do it, to stop and say, you know what? Okay, that was pretty cool, what I just did. But humility is what keeps me working, because I don't get too high-minded, and it keeps me from saying, wow, I'm doing such a great job that I don't have to do anything for a little bit. I'm never there, ever. And that's I believe it's because of humility. I want to keep myself humble before the world or God or somebody else has to humble me. That's the worst type of,
before you get the brick in the face, right?
Yeah. So it's, you can call it a fear. I don't know, hesitation, but I don't want to be humbled by somebody else outside of myself.
How, because it sounds like you had some real struggles in your childhood, right? What do you make of those now as an adult, and especially as a parent looking backwards? Like, has your perspective changed? How do you think about your childhood now?
I look back at my childhood and I'm grateful for it, to be honest.
Mm,
Had I not, you can say, developed those calluses early in life, those calluses to difficulty and to challenges and to obstacles. Once I got them as an adult, I may not have known how to handle them. I may have become
mm,
depressed. I may have become, just so stressed out to where someone could be, I could be suicidal. It's different things to where I experienced death early on of loved ones. When I was 6, the same year, I had a cousin who was shot and killed.
mm,
And I saw what death was early.
mm,
And what 11 years later, my brother tragically died. It's
mm,
like going through all these things as a kid. Now as an adult, I feel like I'm just at least prepped, not in any morbid way, but I feel
mm,
like I'm just built for life. You know what I mean?
mm,
I feel like a number of things happened early on to where I'm not worried about life. I know a lot of people worry about life. I don't worry about it.
mm,
I don't get anxiety at from a thought about life.
mm,
That doesn't happen with me. I can think about something that may be unideal and I say, okay, cool. If it happens, I already know how to adjust. And that's what
mm,
life is about. It's about making adjustments. We saw with the pandemic, that was about making sudden adjustments. And so my childhood, I'm grateful for it. I'll be honest with you.
mm.
Some things were unideal, much, especially when it comes to death. I would
Yeah,
still rather those things didn't happen,
right.
but that they happened and it helped build me up in a way to where I say, okay, now I can help other people get beyond those
Mhm.
circumstances.
How did those early deaths change you? How do you feel like they influenced your viewpoint as a kid growing up?
As a kid, it let me know that, I knew this early on that tomorrow wasn't promised.
Mm,
And I knew today wasn't promised, to be honest. It wasn't about
mm,
tomorrow was too far away many times.
mm,
And I mean it, I would hear people say like tomorrow isn't promised. I'm like, what about tonight? You know what I mean? And that was a true thought of mine. Like I can go outside and walk to the corner store tonight and you don't know what's going to
mm,
happen because I heard gunshots last night and around the corner.
mm,
So I had a mentality early on of how to just enjoy life because tonight isn't promised. And again, it's not a morbid thought, but unfortunately, it's a
mm,
real thought. Depending on where you come from. It's just I've talked to kids. I've gone back to Philadelphia, and have talked to a number of kids. I've gone to juvenile detention centers and talked to kids, and a lot of them don't see themselves after 21. And it's unfortunate because they don't, we bring up college and they're like, college for what? They don't even
mm,
see themselves. They hope to make it to that age because their friends or two of their friends are already dead, from a drive-by or from this instance or that, or already locked up. So I saw at an early age, I have friends multiple friends who were shot and killed, like it's just teammates. This is all before the age of 22, 21. I had about 3 of my friends shot and killed. So it was just, it let me know you have to enjoy life
mm,
to the fullest. Whatever you do, hey, do it up. You know what I mean? Like
right.
to the absolute best of your ability. Not so much, you know, do it crazily, but like give it every bit of my ability and capabilities as I possibly can. Enjoy the fruits of it after the fact. So
Mm,
that's just it built me up for that in that regard.
mm. Couple things come to mind. I mean, one, I think many people don't learn the lesson that you learned so young until they've hit adulthood, right? Until they start really experiencing some tragedy or personal
Yeah.
challenge or loss of some kind. And it is interesting how, for some lives it hits so young, and even for some people so consistently, and others it's, a really different timeline and different experience. But the other thing that stands out is like not everybody would draw the same lesson out of that experience. What is it that you think, whether it's about your personal makeup, whether it was about, a choice in the way that you chose to look at things? What was it that you think allowed you to actually shift? Because a lot of people probably would have stayed in the fear or negativity mode, right? Of like, oh, life is bad and it's really hard. And like some of these kids, like there's not much to live for, versus the alternative, which is to make the most out of every day
Right.
that you have. What allowed you to do that?
I dare say it's in my DNA. And the only reason why I say that is because I know of the stories that my parents went through. Even while, you know, before they were even together, growing up on this side of Philly, growing up on that side of Philly, and just the wars that they had growing up in the 50s and 60s, right? During high racial tension times and things they had to overcome, and having police rush into their homes and put everybody, all their siblings up against the wall while they're 8 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old, and just accusing them of random things. And these are kids, you know, just sitting down listening to the radio because they didn't have a TV at the time. And I hear these stories growing up and just hear these early moments of perseverance coming from my bloodline, from my parents, my aunts, and my uncles, my grandparents. So I knew early that life wasn't perfect. And again, these aren't negative things. They just wanted to let us know, like, hey, look, watch yourself out there, be prepared out there, and don't follow people. That was a big thing that my parents instilled into all of us. I'm the youngest of four. So, you know, I was all ears to everybody. If anybody was speaking, I was listening, whether they knew it or not. They probably thought I wasn't, because I was still running around, but I heard everything.
Well, and as a parent now, isn't it amazing how many times like you say something and suddenly like little voice is piping up in the next room over, and you're like, how did they hear that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Seriously. It's like a childlike gift. I don't know what
Oh,
it
it's a
is.
superpower. I know.
Right. Right. Seriously. I mean, but that's really what it was. I saw that, you know, life wasn't perfect, but we can still be great people. I saw my parents made it out of, and getting us out of an abandoned home and going into a better neighborhood. I saw how hard they had to work, literally saw how hard they had to work. And just, I believed in it. That was the best part of it. I believed in it. And when I didn't, my parents and my siblings did not let me stay in that unbelief. So even if my brothers, both my brothers, two of my older brothers, even if they were getting in trouble, doing a certain thing, they didn't let me get in trouble.
Right.
He made sure I was the one that didn't get caught up in the same stuff. So that was a key thing for me that I don't speak on that often, but that really helped me out. My siblings, my older sister, who's the oldest of all of us, and my two older brothers, they made sure that with me being the youngest, you know, I made it, right? You know, that if they had this or that fault, they taught me how to not have that be my fault. And that was a huge thing for me, to where they were extensions of my parents. And, you know, they built up a certain level of belief that I can literally, hey, Joe, you can do anything you want to do. Don't let your friends tell you can't, they used to tell me all the time, don't let your teachers tell you what you can't do. I used to hear that a lot. And I just believe that if I want to start a company, if I want to have an idea, this is at 13 years old, I can do it.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that reflection of being the youngest sibling, right? You had the benefit of all these other eyeballs looking down on you and saying, you know, here's how you should do it. And even in light of their own mistakes, I think that's so important to talk about. Share with us a little bit about your transition, right? So you make it into athletics, and I'd love to hear more about your early journey with athletics, what you learned through that process, and then shifting kind of into the next phase where, you know, obviously you are at new heights now and doing some different things. So take us through kind of the athletics portion of your journey.
I mean, athletics, that was a huge driving force for me, as far as to keep myself on a straight line and, you know, not get in trouble, because I wanted to stay on the court. I wanted to stay on the field. I love track and field too, so I used to run. And I didn't want to get in trouble. So I made sure, you know, I stayed in line and just performed well, because I figured, hey, I love to play this game called basketball. I wanted to be like Mike, just like everybody else growing up, wanted to be like Jordan. And so I just would practice all the time. I'm talking when it would rain. I told my son this, and he's done it since I've told him. Every time it would rain, almost every time, I would ask my parents. I remember asking my mom a few times, "Can I go outside? Can I go to the basketball court?" And she's like, "Why? It's raining." I'm like, "Well, nobody else is gonna be at the basketball court. I'm gonna have it all to myself. And that was my mentality. I'm like, yes, I get to have the court all to myself. And so she used to let me go. I'll be dribbling around puddles as if the puddles were the defenders on the basketball court. And I couldn't wait for it to rain some weeks. I'm like, all right, because yesterday there were too many people at the basketball court and I couldn't even hardly get on the court. I was small. So that mentality took me really far as taking full advantage of my opportunities to play and to practice. And it got me a Division I college scholarship. And I was the #1 recruit for a ton of schools around the country. And, ended up playing for the #1 prep school in the country in prep school, and was number 30 in the country as far as prep players, and just achieved a lot of great things. And, beyond that, that took me into the professional rankings, being a pro ball player, and had an amazing experience with that, just traveling and meeting a lot of people that I admired and playing against people that I admired. That was the best part, because I was like, I get to compete against them now. And it truly a dream, definitely a dream.
Do you have any highlights from those years? Like any favorite memories that come to mind always as kind of like the top memories for you?
Yeah. So this was actually before I even made it pro. This was my second year of college. I got a chance to work out with a lot of pros this one summer. I was invited to a workout, and it was only 30 that can come every single day. This was in Philly. It was a private, closed workout. No media can come in, no visitors, no one. But there's a lot of NBA guys there and different overseas basketball players, and about two, top 10 high school basketball players that were invited. And Allen Iverson came. And that, again, being in Philadelphia, early 2000s, Allen Iverson, he was like,
top of your list.
Right. He was on that level, like literally. He was Michael Jackson-esque level. If you see him walking down the street or at a restaurant, you heard screams. So he was, so to have him come and begin working out, me being able to work out with him, be on his team and things like that, it was amazing. And he was just, really down to earth and just really relatable, could just talk to you and things like that. And a few years before that, I had a conversation with Kobe Bryant, about a half hour, which changed my whole everything, changed my whole life. I wrote about it in my book, actually, called A Moment with the Mamba. And just some mentalities that he helped give me. But I would say that Allen Iverson, being on the court, sharing the court with him, that was a huge highlight for me. And there's a whole lot of things that I learned, even from just that time frame, that I transferred into business now. And it made my transition that much easier, just because of the mentality that I gained from sports and coming across some of these people and asking so many annoying questions. I'm a student. If I come across somebody that I've been admiring, I'm going to ask you some questions, because I want to know a reason why I admire you, right? So I'm going to ask you a few questions so I can learn something and maybe get to your level.
Well, it must have been quite something to have these folks on your list on a pedestal, and then suddenly be there with them in the room, working out, right? Interacting. I'd love to know what carried over. You said some things carried over from that time into your path forward of entrepreneurship. Do you mind sharing what some of those were?
No, not at all. I mean, there's a few different intangible things, but just the tangible ones. Waking up early. That's something that I learned, and obviously we hear that all the time. Wake up early. Take advantage of the hours of the day, but it really makes a difference. For me now, being a parent, waking up early is different from the reasons why I used to wake up early. In a way, I wake up early now because it's quiet time. My son is still asleep. So I now have 2 hours before I have to wake him up at 7 a.m. Right. And that's a very important time for me. And plus, the rest of the world is asleep for the most part. No one's at least expecting an email during that time, or a response, or a text back. And that's clutch for me, because communication is huge with my business. And the fact that I can have a couple, 2.5 hours if I do a pre-5 o'clock wake up, it allows me just me time, right? And it's nothing like having that, knowing I can work on my own clock and not have to get back to this email right now because no one's awake expecting it. I don't have to initiate this or that. So I wake up early for that reason, and also to maximize on the work day. And I use that time for my creative time because, again, once 9 or 10 o'clock hits, you're kind of on everybody else's time. So, that waking up early is a huge thing. And just beyond that, just, putting blinders on and just locking in.
Oh, I love that, right? Well, it is interesting how much can change once children are in the equation, right? So even in our household during COVID, it was such a challenge for me to find, because kids were home the first year, even year and a few months of COVID. I had 2 kids at home full time, right? School went online, which really meant school was not happening. My son has ADHD, and sitting in front of a computer all day being online is just like so not a fit. It's not, I'm just going to say it's not a fit for kids generally. It's definitely not a fit for kids that need to be moving and interacting and doing stuff in real life. So it was a real challenge. And I ended up finding out that if I tried to wake up early, the kids would hear me, even if I was being so quiet. And, and so I ended up doing the reverse and staying up
late.
Gotcha. Oh, it had its own challenges, right? I still feel like I'm paying for that a little bit, but it is interesting how much schedules can change once you have kiddos in the mix. But how great that you've been able to maintain an early morning routine. I'd love to know what the favorite part of your morning is.
Well, my favorite part is just, when I first wake up. When I first wake up, I pray, and when I pray, it instills a level of belief in me because I pray for what I desire. I'm being honest. I'm not one that's afraid to ask for what I want, right? Because that means you get not because you seek not. It's just literally the way things work. So I pray for efficiency every single day. And there's been moments to where I'm like, I didn't pray for that. I'm like, I could tell I haven't been on the ball today. I'm like, let me pray for it. Let me say a quick prayer, or just put my mind on it, and it's that time of peace to where I get to almost reflect while I'm praying. I'm praying for other people. I'm thanking, God for different things, and it just puts me in a grateful place. And we spoke on humility earlier. That's a huge part of it for me, being grateful, being thankful, reviewing what I call my bag, my blessings, my accomplishments, and my goals. I review my bag often, and that is what keeps me in a place of grinding. I'll be honest, I love the grit side of this show. I appreciate that word even being in there because that's what I'm high on. I'm high on the grit side of things, the grind, just the process of things. So that's what I pray about every single day. So when I wake up, that's my favorite portion. I wake up, I pray, eat a light breakfast, and I work out. After that workout, I eat a second breakfast, and then I get to work. Right. I love to eat. You and the
hobbits, yeah.
I love to eat. I'm not afraid to admit it. I work out. I try to outwork my diet though, but I love to eat.
Oh, that's good. Well, it's such an important reminder, whether you pray, whether it's a mindfulness practice, the reality is, where we focus on grows, right? Whatever we're focusing on and our attention follows, things follow that. It sets into motion things that otherwise don't happen. And so, I think the importance of some kind of practice, if it can be a morning practice, amazing. But some kind of practice daily is just, I think the older that we get, the more significant we realize those little rituals, right? That really are the cornerstones of what we can build in our life. And so I love you. Yeah, I love you sharing that with us. And the mention around gratitude, right? Because there's a ton of science now that can prove how good gratitude is for our brain, right? For our brain functioning. Yeah, they've done all kinds of scientific studies that show gratitude literally changes the brain.
Amazing.
Right. And so even in just small ways, building that in, I love finding little moments like with kiddos, like having a quick gratitude moment, like let's just name 3 things that we're all grateful for. And,
I love it.
yeah, just
Mhm.
trying to, refocus, especially when kiddos are like feeling challenged, which my
Yeah.
goodness, we've had our share during COVID, 2 little people basically being
Right,
stuck in
right.
the house all day.
Sure. I'm
Right.
sure.
A lot of parents can relate to that, but it's I don't know. I just love the elegance and the simplicity of your morning ritual because it really does highlight some of I think some really important themes for all of us.
Yeah.
Um, so aside from your morning ritual and the lesson you learned about getting up early, what other ways did you learn lessons through your athletic career that have translated really well for you in entrepreneurship?
Well, it's two things that come to mind. Two other things that come to mind.
Mm,
So I learned how to endure. Right, it's a huge thing. When it comes to the physical side of life, when it comes to athletics, you have to have endurance. Physical and more than that, mental. You have to have a ton of mental endurance. You have to have a lot of mental flexibility and just know how to pivot on the drop of a dime mentally, because you may have, even let's say even in college as a student athlete, you got to go from class to workout to class to practice to study hall. And it's like you have to quickly switch
mm,
gears like this. And
mm,
that taught me quite a bit to be able to multitask, to handle things, and to be able to do a bunch of things, but only do one thing at a time. And that
mhm.
helped me out so much to even now to where I do a lot. You said a few things early in the episode as far as the bio, but I only do one thing at a time. And that's how I focus. I put blinders on to that one thing when it's time for that one thing. And I give everything to that one thing. When it's just me and my son, I'm only a father. And it's like
Yeah.
when it comes to business, at that moment, if I'm on a call, that's what I am. Obviously, I have extensions elsewhere. If I hear a fall in the background, I have to, get off the
Right.
call. But but
You've always
I'm
got the
all in.
parent ears. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But I'm all in with what I do. If I'm on a court today, for a charity game or something, I'm a ball player. And I'm not concerned with other things taking place, or I'm
Mhm.
not going to be in that moment. So I'm big on being in the moment, and that's what sports taught me, how to be in the moment. And that's, it was a number of sports psychologists I've worked with, for myself, and also just to pick their brains. I'm friends with a lot of them. That's how I learned to be what we call being in the zone. That's just being in the moment, being aware, fully aware of what's in front of you at that present moment, not concerned with anything else. Most importantly, not being concerned with any end result. That's one thing I apply now in business. I am not worried about an end result. I'm so in tune with just killing it where I am to the best of my ability. The end result is going to be a byproduct of my current work. So I'm not worried about it. And I try to relay that to my team too. Look, let's not worry about what's going to happen. Let's just handle what we can handle and let that take care of itself. We'll put
Mm,
ourselves in a good place or even in a better place because our work was so great that we exceeded our initial desired end result. And that has happened to me on the court. I've won multiple national championships in college. So I apply the same mentality now in business to where I'm like, kill it as much as you can now. Don't take up any mental real estate thinking about the future. For
mm,
what? That's going to take care of itself, based off of what you do in the present. And having that mentality, I've gained that from sports. And another major thing I gained from sports that I transfer into business, this is a huge one for me, was my sophomore year of college. I won a national championship that year, and that coach was crazy. Like in an amazing way, though. In hindsight, for sure. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He got the best out of me. Up to that point, I was in good shape, but he took me to my threshold. I have no problem admitting it. I've told him since. I said he broke me down. Um, and he had this mentality of saying one more all the time. So all right, guys, let's go ahead. Let's get 10 reps of this. And out of the blue, we knock out our 10 reps. One more. We like, come on, coach. Like you said we had 10. And then we do 11. One more. And then we have 12. One more. We do 17 in the end. It's because he saw once we got to 10, we were capable of one more. We were capable of one more. And then he stopped us once we couldn't go anymore. And he helped us to seek failure. And that was a huge thing, because once you seek failure, that means you're going all out. You're going all out. And that's what I apply in business now. I'm like, you know what? I have to read this document. Okay, I'm going to read, 10 pages of it so I can at least start on it. I get my 10 done. Let me read one more. And all of a sudden I'm reading 11, 12, or 13 pages of it. And now I'm even more fulfilled as a result, because I did that one more. And, it's like, let me even give this one more attempt if I failed at something or I messed up at something. That one more mindset, it has taken me so far. And this, I feel, taking me so far. I love it. I play mental games with myself all the time, knowing if I tell myself 10, it's going to be 13, 14. I know myself by now. So I'm even telling myself, if I know it's going to be a little bit more than that, I tell myself one more until I just literally tap out. And I didn't mention this, but when I was talking to Kobe Bryant, he told me, this is fly that's been moving around the whole time. Kobe told me that you have to be willing to see black. And that was a huge thing for me that I didn't understand at first. But I started to get it as I watched him away from our conversation. And then I started to apply it. He said, look, you got to be willing to tap out, man. You got to go that hard, to where if you don't, go that hard, you won't actually see what you're truly capable of. You'll just kind of see dabbles, and you'll start hearing this word potential thrown around about you all the time. You don't want to hear that word, because that means you're not stepping into your purpose. And that was a huge thing for me. So I wanted to rid myself of potential and actually show what I had.
So many things come to mind as you speak, reflecting back on even just the single concept of being in the moment and how athletics ingrained that so deeply into you. And it sounds like you've done additional work around that as well. And what a challenge that one thing is for humans everywhere, pretty much in every area of life. You take modern day living, and then you layer COVID on top, and people working really under extraordinary circumstances. And that one single thing, I think, really challenges people. Yep. How, and I'm sure you've had your own journey through COVID as a parent and an entrepreneur, and, how in moments where you're like, oh, I'm a little off, or I'm just not quite on point, how do you get yourself back into the zone?
Again, that's a lot of times I'll review what I call my bag, my blessings, my accomplishments, and my goals. It allows me to reflect a little bit on what I've been able to do.
Refocusing exercise. Yeah.
Exactly. Just to say, okay, you know what? You're built for this. Sometimes you need to build yourself up. And that's a way of doing it. And just, again, talking about gratefulness, that's what it does. Looking at your blessings. Okay, man, I actually have this. I'm not as bad as I thought. I'm not as bad off as I've been thinking. I'm blessed. I'm cool. We're good. And because a lot of times we let our moments overshadow everything else. And it's like, don't do that. You got to bring yourself down to earth, back to earth a little bit, and then just reviewing my goals. I'm so goal oriented and such a visionary. I literally see and feel my imagination. I'm a kid at heart still, and I do exercise with my son now, to where we use our imagination just to keep him in that place of creativity. And I bounce business ideas off of him, because he's really in that place of no limitation. And I've told him this too. I said, look, man, we're going to talk business right now in a car. We're driving around. So I'll tell him things that I'm working on to get his input, because as much as I don't want to be, I still may have and operate out of some limitations based off of statistics that I know, and all these things and experiences. He doesn't have those experiences. He doesn't know statistics. He's not limited by those things. So I'll tell him so he can just give me the raw feelings and creative thoughts off of it. And so that's something that I go over often, just to keep me in a place of creativity, to where I'm like, I feel a little off. I've had those moments plenty of times, to where I'm like, okay, it just takes some communication with somebody else at this moment, to where I need to be recentered and refocused.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea of sharing it, especially with your kid. But even this list, like the second on your list of the bag items, the accomplishments, power, because I think it is easy to be like, well, that was then, or that was in a different area of my life. And I think a lot of us, especially those of us who are hard on ourselves, it's easy to forget, like, oh yeah, I accomplished, for some of us, it might have been a lifelong dream. Like, I already accomplished that thing in that area of my life. Like, of course I can do this really challenging thing over here. I think it's easy for us to kind of like leave those in the past or not always reflect on them. And so I love that that's on your list.
Yeah, it's a huge one for me because I'm still me. It doesn't matter how long ago that accomplishment was. I did that, you know what I mean? And that's a huge thing, to where I know it was me that accomplished that thing. There's nothing that can tell me I cannot do that thing again. So even if I weigh 320 pounds right now, right? And I used to weigh 320 pounds before, and I lost it. I went down to 210, but I got back up to 320. I did this before. You know, I got to look back at it and say, I'm the same person on the inside. No matter what, I did that before, I can do it again. And have to believe it. I got to feel it. The moment I start to feel it, it's on from there.
Well, it's such an important thing to remember, that sometimes we just have to be reminded of our own greatness, right? And maybe that's an exercise we can run ourselves through. Maybe it's something that we need somebody else's help to reflect back to us. But I think it's really important to keep that on the list. And then, I loved your comment about, I can do a bunch of things, but only one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many. There's a favorite, I think it's a John Assaraf quote that says, do one thing basically to the point of excellence to completion, right? Like, it's the only way that you make progress, is do something well to completion. And then the next time, do it better to completion, right? And as a mom, and especially post-COVID, where so many days my brain felt like scrambled eggs from all of the context switching, right? 1 second on my 2-year-old. That's how old my daughter was when COVID started, right? And 10 minutes on work. And now my 8-year-old needs help. He's now 10, right? Or like whatever. It just felt like thousands of times during the day I'd have to context switch, and it was mind numbing. But even now, trying to get back into a regular routine and getting structure back to life, I think a lot of people are in this place, like, okay, what is life going to look like, moving kind of into this next phase? And I think that's such an important thing. Do one thing well at a time to completion.
That's what leads to great balance. You know what I mean? It just allows you to still feel like, you know what? I got it all handled. I'm good, and I've had people call on me and just to check on me, say, man, you got a lot going on. You all right? You good? I'm like, I'm perfect. It's funny because sometimes when people will feel the stress that they think you feel, but you don't feel it, based off of their perception of what you have taken place and transpiring. But I've actually told people this, and again, with no arrogance, I just said, look, I'm cool. I can handle it. You're just not able to handle it. So I've said it before. I just say,
I'm good over here. What are you worried about?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm fine. It's just, I know it seems like it's a lot, but I'm very balanced. You know what I mean? I got it. I have people that I've delegated this to, so I don't actually have to handle all of that. And this is actually taking place, but it's not really live until next week. And it's things to where, thank God, it's orchestrated. And that's one thing I take a whole lot of pride in. I mean, I love orchestrating things, the same way a conductor does with his little wand. It's like, all right, so you over here, you make your sounds now, and you keep that going. And all right, now you dial that down, and you over it. I love orchestrating things, life, honestly, orchestrating life and making music, beautiful music of life, because I feel like, again, we're put here for this long, for a stint, but it's a long stint, hopefully, it's a stint to where it's a lifetime stint, which can be a really long time to do a whole lot of stuff. And I'm one to where there's a book by Les Brown that I read maybe 10 years ago called Live Full, Die Empty. I believe it's in it. Yeah, Live Full, Die Empty. And just the title spoke to me. I'm like, shoot, that sounds like something I've been attempting to do and didn't realize it. But once I heard the title, I'm like, okay, I get exactly where he's coming from. I have to read this book. And that's what it's about. Doing what you feel compelled to do, what you feel like you have a purpose to do, what you would like to do, what you desire to do, and going after it, doing it, being fulfilled with life. And that's something I'm huge on. I tell other people that I work with that all the time. It's people that no longer works with me because I've pushed them away because I could tell they wanted to do something else. Literally, because I'm like, no, because you're going to take away from what we have going on. I suggest you do that because you'll be more fulfilled. With one of my recent interns this past summer, I had the same conversation. I said, look, man, you're the president of this at your college. You have that going on. He felt bad about leaving. I said, no, leave. I want you to actually, at this point, I want you to go. And no hard feelings. If you want to come back on, cool. At this point, I would rather you actually take on those other responsibilities because you light up when you talk about it.
Yeah.
Not lighting up about what we have going on right now. So that's a huge thing for me, to where it's like, do the things that's making you feel good. You know what I mean? And that's a huge part of just life. And just you resent other people less, you resent yourself less, and you just really enjoy this thing called life that much more.
Even that last point you made about, and there was a quote years ago, I should go look it up, but it was a guy, kind of one of those long voiceover videos that floated around and went viral online about, like, we need people who are lit up at work. Like, right. We don't need people going to JOBs, right? We need people right. who are really lit up at work and doing what they love. It is interesting how often you see people, though, hanging on to something where they're not lit up. That they're just trudging through. It's, and when you see it, I think it's so heartbreaking from the outside because you just want to like shake somebody and be like, hey, right? But it's that whole, I don't know, fear center that keeps us stuck.
It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. I mean, especially if it's, someone you're connected to, you're friends with. It's like, man, you're enjoying it, but they're not. It's a tough call sometimes to, like, you want them to be on board fully, but they're not. Their heart just isn't in the same direction as yours at the moment.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
it is what it is sometimes, to be honest.
It is what it is, but I love that you're pushing people out the door when you can spot that, because I think it really makes a difference in somebody's path and their work and what they're able to accomplish if they're doing something that is really true to them versus, hanging on for the wrong reasons. I totally want to be respectful of time, and I feel like I've got a bunch more questions for you, but one that comes to mind is, I'd love to know what some of the favorite parts of your entrepreneurial journey have been.
Oh, that's a big one. Well, obviously, being able to partner with Nike Sports Camps was a huge one for myself, because I got my business license when I was playing abroad in Europe. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was 11 years old.
You did. I love that. I love hearing the origin story.
Yeah, it was in me. I made a board game when I was about 11. And true story, what I'm about to say, the board game it was not under me, but it just came out. The game that I actually created when I was 11, this is in 1996. I actually have the board game still that I made. My parents, they kept it in my old closet. And I went back and got it about a year and a half ago. I showed it to my son probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And we were in Target, right? We were in the store. I think this might have been during the pandemic, during shutdowns.
Yeah.
And we spotted this Space Jam game with LeBron James. It was Space Jam Monopoly game. Now, when I was younger, I made literally a game board, huge actual trifold game board, and I made all squares instead of properties. I made them into NBA teams. I drew every NBA team on it, and I drew the hardwood in the middle of the game board, right? And certain spots were fouls. So if you land on a spot, you get to go and take a foul shot, right? And I created a catapult system in this little hoop. So if you make it, I had a little ball of foil that I made, right? and you kind of catapult it into the hoop. And the whole concept was like, you can rack up as many points as you want, and but if you land on these foul shots, you got to go and get on the bench. That's jail, right? So I had all these things. And so my son, he was well aware of this. We played it at my parents' house before. I just had the old court and, had his old catapult system. Never cared to take it to Mattel. My brother did tell me before, you need to take that to Mattel. This was like back in the day. I'm like, no, this is my game. I wasn't thinking with that entrepreneurial, that mindset yet. Like, I'm like, this is mine. This is just for us to play. And let alone in the store. And my son said, he saw the picture on the back of the box. He said, it looked like the game board you made. I looked at it. I was like, get out of here. And so I started reading the instructions, for the game. I'm like, this is my game. And so I bought it that night. So we came home, we were playing it. And like a few days later, we drove to Philly and picked up my old game and put them side by side. And we have a picture of what I drew versus what, and it's almost identical. It's nuts. But I always had the spirit of just creating things and just building things. I used to want to be an architect. I used to build houses all the time, that same age.
Yeah.
Creating things from scratch. And I had the same spirit over in Europe when I was playing basketball. I ran a social network. Many people do not know this about me at all. I ran a fashion social network. This is back in 2008, 2009, before Twitter was just getting off its feet. Like I remember getting on Twitter and nobody was on there. So I know it was very early. TikTok obviously wasn't around. Instagram wasn't even a thought. So many of these sites weren't even around. Snapchat. Facebook, you still needed .edu at the time.
Totally.
And I created this social network for the fashion industry to where we used to create, connect models with photographers and event planners and designers, and everybody can kind of just socialize online. And we had a lot of members, thousands within like 6 months, and paying members. I just didn't have the time to keep it up. I was a pro basketball player, but I had a lot of downtime over there. But I just like, okay, this is getting a little stressful. And
I love it. So entrepreneurship.
I had all these ventures. I had a number of ventures. I put it like that. And just, as an entrepreneur, that was a beautiful part of the journey, failing, to be honest, seeing what doesn't work. And that's what helped me with my current business, knowing, okay, that fashion industry site didn't work because it wasn't my passion. I didn't have a passion for fashion, I guess you could say. Like, it wasn't truly me. It was a great idea that I decided to entertain, but it wasn't me. What I do now is me. That's why it has longevity. That's why we've been in business for, over a decade. And it's like, once you find that as an entrepreneur, you know it. You know it's unforced. You want to, like, you can stay up late and do it. You know what I mean? You're willing to stay up late. It's a willingness that goes along with desire. And that's the thing that I found out. I'm like, when I desire something great, I'm more willing to, when I really love someone, I'm more willing to. And it was a big thing I had to attach to business. And for me, that's what led me to being able to be connected with Nike Sports Camps, to lead up to that point and say, you know what, this is it. That's what's going to help take us to another level and be able to just do all these different things. And, I've been able to do some really cool, you can see back here, being on a box of Cheez-Its and, it's just all these random things. They recently just surprised me with my own action figure. I was like, this is so cool. Just as an entrepreneur, being able to have the creative freedom to do things that you think of feels amazing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh, I think so many people can relate to the entrepreneurial journey, the piece about like creation, right? Creativity and being able to apply their creativity in a unique way, but also self-directed way. I think that's a huge component of it. And I love your connecting passion with basically the ability to develop grit, right? Without the passion, I think it's really hard to have the grit.
Yeah, it's tough.
Right? Like sticking through day in and day out. I think that can be a real challenge for people if their heart is not really in it. And so you know, even in the book Grit, by Angela Duckworth, which the funny thing is I read after I launched this podcast. I was like, I should probably go get that book and read it, you know. But she talks a little bit about that connection and how, you know, it doesn't have to be, because a lot of people think, well, like, what if I don't know what I'm passionate about? And, you know, I don't think you have to have that at the start, the passion, but you do have to develop some kind of meaning around your work, around what it is that you're doing, so that you feel passionately enough about it. Because even in her stories around grit, and really I think what set her on the path to discovering that grit was the key to success is she just asked the question, what makes people successful, and just started interviewing a ton of people and looking at different studies that had been done. And turns out it wasn't brains, wasn't even natural talent, wasn't any of the things that a lot of people think, like, oh, you're just either gifted with those things or not.
Right.
It was literally the ability to show up day after day after day and keep trudging through. That's it. That's the single biggest defining factor for success.
That's the amazing part, to where I discovered that. Again, you want to say, what did I gain from athletics? I definitely got my grit from athletics. I mean, it's just, again, that trudging through is a huge thing, to where it's like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. You know, I hate this. I hate it. But I'm still moving.
Still showing up.
That's what it's about. You know, it's just, you know, I say you got to have, you know, the grit of a sprinter, but the grind of a marathoner. That's a big thing that I think of all the time, to where it's like, my grit is there. I'm for the moment, but I'm also for that moment for a long period of time if I need to. I'm willing to grind this thing out as a marathoner would. And it's huge. That leads so many people to success, just like doing it despite. That's a huge thing for me, that despite, people don't do despite, because they feel a certain way, so they stop. A lot of people, but those that make it, and that continues to make it, they feel a certain way, they move forward despite how they feel. And that's why they're so disciplined, and that's why they're successful.
Oh, that's huge. Joel, I've so enjoyed our conversation. I would love to invite people to connect with you wherever you like to show up online. Do you want to share with us where you are?
Sure. I'm on Instagram pretty heavy nowadays. J Green PLT, that's JAY Green PLT. I'm on there. Finally on TikTok, after too many people have been yelling at me,
coercing you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm same handle on there, J Green PLT. So I'm growing my, you know, ability on there as much as I can. Fairly new, but you can find me on Facebook as well, Joel Green Official, or just look up Joel Green. And my website, joelbgreen.com. You can reach me there. That's where I do a lot of the motivational speaking, connections, and things of that sort. But I'm big on engagement. So if you guys reach out, trust me, you will hear right back from me.
Oh, I love it. And we will be sure also to share the link over to your book, which is now live. So we'll be sure to pop that in the show notes. So if you're listening, make sure you visit the show notes, legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Look for Joel's episode. Joel, such a pleasure to connect with you today and hear your story, and so many amazing nuggets of wisdom that really are just so applicable to us all. What final step or takeaway would you like to leave people with that are listening?
You know what? I'll go, you know, I wanted to say something else a second ago, but I'm going to go based off of what pretty much I just said, just to reiterate it. Move forward despite. You know, you're going to have moments to where you will not feel like doing something. There are times to where you have to put your feelings aside. You know, it's not about your feelings all the time. It's about the fulfillment, to be honest, beyond the feelings. So I don't pursue happiness any longer. It's literally not a part of my equation. I pursue fulfillment every day. So if I wake up at 4:30, I'm not happy to do that at all. Hardly ever am I happy to do that. But it's so fulfilling that I do it again and again and again. So just different moments, guys. Just no matter how you feel, move forward despite how you feel. Sometimes put those feelings aside, find that fulfillment within all that you do. It's going to be hard not to be successful at what you're doing. And, you know, just as Heather said, again, you know, you find the section of this I wrote about fulfillment in my book. I think you'll really appreciate that. You can find it on Amazon, and I really hope it touches you guys. That's the main objective of writing this book, just to really help you guys, give you a tool to help you get something from your struggles, your difficulties in life, to help you get exactly what you need to get from that situation. So hopefully it really helps you guys out.
I love it. I'm super excited to check it out. Joel, thank you. And I'm just going to reiterate the phrase of, I don't pursue happiness, I pursue fulfillment. That's huge. I think people can really reframe their thoughts around even what happiness is when you view it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joel. Such a joy to have you here today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much, Heather. Again, this was fun. I really appreciate it.